Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Bava Metzia. We are up to Perek Chet Mishna Alayev. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'elu Nishmat Neria ben Svetlana Ranbai Eliyahu ben Burchai Israelov Chana ben Miriam Sason ben Ryan Yoshua ben Shifra Menuchatam Began Eden Amen and Avdi ben Chaim Lechaim v'derefua Shelemav Daniel Shalom ben Rosa Betor Shah Cholei Yisrael and Achlama Merav Binyamin Od Zion Chai ben Dvorah. We learned in the previous chapter, chapter 7, Mishnah 8, that someone who borrows an item must pay for any damage or loss that happens to it, even if it was the result of a complete accident and there was nothing he could have done to prevent it. The Mishnah now teaches an exception to this rule. If someone borrowed a cow and borrowed its owner along with it, meaning at the time he borrowed the cow, he asked its owner to do some work for him without pay, and the owner agreed. Now the commentary is that even if the work the owner does for the borrower has nothing to do with the work that will be done by the cow, for example, the borrower asked the owner to bring him a drink of water and he agreed to do it. Or if at the time he borrowed the cow, he hired its owner along with it. Or if he first borrowed or hired the owner, and afterwards while the owner was still working for him, he borrowed the cow as well. Vameta, and in each of these cases, if the cow died, even if the owner is no longer working for him at that time, patur, he is exempt from paying for it because the owner was working for him when he borrowed the cow. Shenemar, as it states in Shemot chapter 22, verse 14, Im be'alav imo lo yishalem. If its owner is working with him, the borrower shall not pay. This teaches that as long as the animal's owner is working for the borrower when he borrows it, he does not have to pay for its damage or loss. The words, if its owner is with him, mean that he is with him as his employee. The Gemara shows that these words refer to the time when the cow was borrowed and not when it dies. So the verse teaches that if the owner was working for the borrower at the time he borrowed the cow, the borrower is free from paying for the cow when it dies. However, if he first borrowed the cow, and only afterwards borrowed or hired the cow's owner, the cow then died, Chayav, the borrower is obligated to pay for it because the owner of the cow was not working for the borrower when the cow was borrowed. Even if the owner was working for the borrower when the cow died, since he was not working for him when he borrowed the cow, he is obligated to pay. The key moment is when the cow was borrowed, not when it dies. Shenemar, as it states in Shemot chapter 22, verse 13, Be'alav en imo shalem mishalem. If the owner is not working with him, the borrower shall surely pay. Now, there is seemingly no need for the Torah to say this, since the verse quoted earlier said that the borrower does not have to pay if the owner is working for him. It's obvious that if he is not working for him, he does have to pay. Why then does the Torah say it? We must therefore say that when the verse says the owner is not working with him, it does not mean that he is not working for him at all. Rather, it means that he was not working with him when he borrowed the cow. Even though he is working with him when the animal dies, if he was not working for him when he borrowed the cow, the borrower must pay. The time of borrowing is considered the key because that is when the borrower becomes responsible not only for returning the animal, but also for feeding it. Although the Mishnah discusses a case in which the cow died on its own, which is the case discussed by the verse, the same law applies if the cow was stolen, lost, or died before the borrower was negligent. And this law applies not only to a borrower, but to all the shomrim. So if an unpaid shomer took the job of caring for an object while its owner was working for him, he does not have to pay for anything that happens to it, even if he was negligent. And that is in a Mishnah Aleph. We learned in chapter 7, Mishnah 8, that a renter does not have to pay for accidental losses that he could not have prevented. Our Mishnah, Mishnah Bet, deals with someone who was both a renter and a borrower, and the animal he was using died accidentally. The question is whether it was a rented animal that died or a borrowed one. The Mishnah begins by presenting three cases of how he became both a renter and a borrower, and then gives the laws for all three cases. Hasho'elet hapara, someone borrows a cow. She'ala chatzi yom uschara chatzi yom, and either he borrowed it for half the day and rented it for the other half of the day. She'ala yom uschara lemachar, or he borrowed it for a full day and rented it for the next day. Sachar achat v'she'al achat, or he rented one cow from the owner and borrowed another one from him. V'meta, and the cow died. But we do not know whether it died during the time it was borrowed, or during the time it was rented, or whether it was the borrowed cow that died or the rented one. If it was the borrowed cow that died, or if the cow died during the time in which it was borrowed, then the borrower must pay for it. If the rented cow died, or the cow died during the time it was rented, then he does not have to pay for it. Whatever the case, there was no witnesses to say what really happened. The Mishnah now teaches that the law in these cases depends on the claims made by the borrower and the lender. There are 4 possible sets of claims, and the law is different for each of them. The Mishnah now begins with the first set of claims. Hamashir omer she'ula meta. If the lender says the borrowed cow is definitely the one that died, b'yom she'eta she'ula meta, or in the case where he borrowed it for one day and rented it for another, the lender says it definitely died on the day it was borrowed. B'shah she'eta she'ula meta, or in the case where he borrowed it for half a day and rented it for the other half of the day, the lender says it definitely died during the time it was borrowed. V'ala omer ani yodeh, and in all of these cases, the other one, the borrower says, I do not know what happened. Chayav, the borrower is obligated to pay for the cow. The simple meaning of the Mishnah is that the borrower must pay because the lender is certain of his claim and the borrower is not. Although the Gemara cites a dispute about this, the accepted view is that a person who does not know whether he is obligated to pay cannot be forced to pay based simply on someone else's definite claim. Bari v'shema lav bari adif. For this reason, the Rav, based on the Gemara 97b, explains that the Mishnah is speaking about a special case where, in addition to their claims, the borrower is also obligated to make an oath about his claim. This will be explained further later on. So again, Chayav, the borrower is obligated to pay for the cow. Since the borrower would have to swear an oath in this case to free himself from paying, and he cannot swear that he is exempt because he admits that he does not know what really happened, he is required to pay. The rule is that whenever a person must swear a biblical oath to free himself from paying, and he cannot do so, he is obligated to pay. As like on page 98a in Metzia says, Mitoch shenechol ishava mishalem. Since the borrower must swear an oath and he cannot do so, he must pay for the cow in question, even though the lender cannot prove his claim. The borrower is required to swear an oath because the Mishnah speaks of a case where he actually borrowed another cow besides the one they are disputing. Both cows were partially borrowed and partially rented and both died. The lender is now demanding to be paid for both, claiming that both died during the time they were borrowed. The borrower admits that one of them died while it was borrowed and he must pay for it, but he is unsure whether the other one died while it was borrowed or while it was rented. Since he admits to part of the lender's claim, he must swear the biblical oath of a modeh b'miktzat, someone who admits to part of a claim. Since he cannot swear that the second cow died while it was rented, he must pay for it. In the last case, where one cow was borrowed and one was rented and it is not clear whether the borrowed cow died or the rented one died, the Mishnah speaks of a case where there was yet a third cow involved, and that too was borrowed. 2 of the 3 cows died. The borrower admits that he has to pay for one of them since one of the 2 was surely borrowed, but he is unsure whether he has to pay for the other one since it might have been the rented cow. Here too, since he admits that he must pay for at least one of the cows, he must swear the oath of someone who admits to part of a claim in order to free himself from paying for the other one, and since he cannot swear, he must pay. The second set of claims, Hasocher omer schura meta, if the renter, the same person the Mishnah previously called the borrower, is what's referred to here as the renter, meaning the one who rented and borrowed the cows. The Mishnah now calls him the renter because he claims that the cow definitely died while he was renting it. So, Hasocher omer schura meta, if the renter says the rented cow is definitely the one that died. B'yom she'eta schura meta, or in the case where he borrowed the cow for one day and rented it for another day, the renter says it definitely died on the day it was rented. B'shah she'eta schura meta, or in the case where he borrowed it for half a day and rented it for half a day, he says it definitely died during the time it was rented. V'ala omer ani yodeh, and in all of these cases, the other one, the cow's owner, says, I do not know what happened. Patur, the renter is exempt from paying for the cow that died because the renter is not obligated to swear an oath in this case. Although we explained earlier that there were actually 2 cows involved, or 3, and the renter borrower admits that he must pay for one of them, he still does not have to swear about the other one. The oath for someone who admits to part of a claim applies only when the one making the claim says that he has definitely owed the money. If he only claims that he has possibly owed the money, no oath is required. Since the cow's owner admits that he does not know whether the renter must pay for the cow in question, the renter is not obligated to swear, therefore he does not have to pay for the cow in question. The third set of claims, Zeomer She'ula, if the cow's owner says it was definitely the borrowed cow that died, or he says the cow definitely died while it was borrowed, the Zeomer Sechua, the renter says it was definitely the rented cow that died, or he says the cow definitely died while it was rented, Ishava Socher She'schua Meta, the renter should swear that the rented cow died, or that the cow died while it was being rented, and then he does not have to pay. Since in this case the owner of the cow claims that it was definitely the borrowed cow that died, and the renter admits that one of the 2 cows died while it was the borrowed one, he is required to swear the biblical oath of a modeh b'miktzat, someone who admits to part of a claim. However, since the renter says that he is sure that it was a rented cow that died, he can swear this oath and free himself from paying. Since he is sure that he is right about which animal died or when it died, there is nothing to prevent him from swearing that his claim is true. Therefore, if he swears, he does not have to pay. The fourth set of claims, Zelmer eni yodeh, the cow's owner says, I do not know what happened. Zelmer eni yodeh, and the renter says, I do not know what happened. Yachaloku, they divide the loss of the cow. The borrower pays for half its value, and the owner loses the other half. The renter is not obligated to swear that it died while it was rented, because the owner of the cow does not claim definitely that it did. On the other hand, the renter is not completely free from paying because he admits that he might be obligated. They therefore split the value of the cow in question, while the renter pays, with the renter paying half and the owner losing half. This follows the opinion of Sumchus, who holds that when two people have a claim about something we do not know who is right, they divide the money in question. However, the sages hold that when one person already has the money in his possession, the other person cannot take any of it unless he proves that it is his. In this case, the borrower has the money in his possession, and the owner must prove that he deserves to be paid. If he cannot prove it, the borrower swears that he does not know what happened, and he does not have to pay anything. And the opinion does, and the Rav writes, the halakha does not follow Sumchus. The halakha follows the opinion of the sages. And that is the Rabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.